Hello, everybody, and welcome to Hash Rate. My name is Mark Jeffrey. I have three guests today from Gaia. First one is Gabriel Moraga, Noah Kramer, and Stephen Hristopoulos. Hello, gentlemen. Welcome to the show.
Hello.
Hello.
I did not know that all of Gaia was going to be here today. The entire planet has arrived for the show, but I'm happy because we have more voices. So it's always a better show.
This is only part of our team. We have at least two other guys that are shifting to full-time work on Gaia, but we figured that since we all have been on it since the start, that we'd be the best people to talk about it, and also not to crowd the podcast too much.
Yeah,
Sorry,
no, I appreciate that. I mean, three guests is
right
about
now.
all usually it can handle, right? So other than that, it just becomes madness, right? So okay, so let's jump right into what you guys are doing. So Gaia is, I think it's a weather prediction subnet. And so why don't you guys tell me, what are you guys trying to accomplish with Gaia?
Sure. So I can kind of like start off with that. So Gaia was initially envisioned not only as a weather prediction subnet, it was envisioned to be covering a lot of different geospatial tasks. So after I came out of school and I did a little bit of research in the geospatial space, I was kind of noticing that it seemed to be like there was just as much advancement happening in geospatial AI, but not as much commercialization. So it felt like a really good area to tackle. And there are so many different applications in the geospatial space with these kinds of models.
When you say geospatial, do you mean like mapping in general? Like, what does that mean?
Yeah, so really just like any sort of geolocated data. You could think of weather is a great example, obviously, because these data points are located to a latitude and a longitude, and also like in the atmosphere 3D space, they're also located at a pressure level. But geospatial covers a very wide range of things. So Another one of our tasks is soil moisture prediction, which is related to weather. And then the other one is geomagnetic, which is more a space thing than an Earth thing. But like the geomagnetic DST index, basically.
What is that? So is that like where the Earth's magnetic field is, where the aurora borealis is going to maybe show up or something like that?
Yeah, exactly. Do you want to talk about that, Gabriel?
Yeah, so DST is basically incoming, basically radiation from the sun, and it hits our atmosphere, and it does create aurora borealis.
Oh,
and,
so like space weather is what we're talking about.
Yeah,
it's like the Carrington event, right? Like that's actually one of my
exactly.
Like a lot of people don't know about this. So like in the 1800s, like 1850 or something, there was a massive coronal mass ejection from the sun, like we've never seen in our lifetime. Yeah, and it fried the telegraph wires. They caught on fire. And people say like if that happened today, it would fry like every cell phone. There's still like everything would just be destroyed.
Yeah,
Correct.
It would be really bad. So keep our fingers crossed.
Yeah. So knowing about that is very good, right? Like we definitely want to know if that thing's coming, right?
Although even if you had, 45 minutes warning, it's not going to do much.
Yeah, but I have got like Faraday bags and stuff, so like I'm good.
Oh yeah, that helps definitely.
Yeah. Anyway, so please continue. Please tell us more about Gaia.
Okay, so I'll so that was the initial vision, was that Bittensor provides this kind of unique platform with the incentives and the distributed nature of it to tackle these sorts of tasks, which are really well suited for geospatial machine learning. Yep. Because usually these models are pretty small relatively, so it's not like a 500 billion parameter large language model, which takes a huge computer to run. It's more so like models that could be run on a laptop, so or just like a single GPU. So it's really well suited to Bittensor, and there is also a lot of application commercially speaking. So weather is why we're focusing on weather, is that is going to be the kind of data that is most valuable immediately. Like we can just turn around and sell that right away.
Let me ask you a question about that, because I sort of, when I first heard about you guys and the fact that that weather in Bittensor was even a thing. My first thought was like, dude, we've got the weather. Like, just go to weather.com or Yahoo or something, right? Like, we got it. Like, why do we need you guys? Isn't that good enough? Like, what's the scoop there?
Yeah, Steven, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's a good question. I think there's a few different reasons. One natural one is that AI models are starting to be, within the past 2 years, they're starting to be pretty promising in terms of like accuracy and skillfulness of the forecast compared to big like simulation based forecast systems that something like the National Weather Service will implement.
Yeah.
And you know, the benefit that I guess our subnet and our weather task has is that the National Weather Service, I think, spends on the order of $50 million a year to produce the global forecast system. And each model run, if you want to produce like a 10-day forecast, will take several hours of runtime and petaflops of compute. Whereas these AI models can run on a single GPU, they can make a full 10-day forecast in like less than 10 minutes.
Holy shit.
You know, maybe like $2 max.
Oh, wow. Okay, so like orders of magnitude less compute, and the accuracy is relatively the same, or is it better?
It can be much better. There's a few different models. We're using Microsoft Aurora, which is probably the newest AI model, and its accuracy is easily better than the GFS forecast at 3 days, 5 days range. It's comparable to HRES, which is the European high resolution forecast, which seems to be like the gold standard state of the art benchmark to beat. So it's very, very competitive.
Wow. So Microsoft Cobalt. So is that like, so Microsoft basically this is an LLM-ish AI weather prediction model that's open source that anyone can download. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's fully licensed under MIT. It is similar to an LLM where it's transformer based. And they provide a foundational atmospheric model that's tuned over, 1 million GPU hours. And, the weights are MIT licensed. The code is open source. It's PyTorch. It's super flexible. So you can extend it to something like hurricanes or particle diffusion. Like if you want to track ash from volcanoes to pollution, it's very flexible, which is why we went for it.
Wow. Okay. So now you said that this is the model. This is the software you use. By that you mean you have a network of miners that are all competing for the emissions, right? So all of the miners are required to download and install Aurora on their end, and then basically tweak it in various ways to, like, how do I win, right? If everybody's running the same thing, doesn't everybody have the same result? Like, tell me a little bit about that. How do I win your contest?
Right, that's a good question. Yeah, so Aurora is the base model that we provide every miner, and they can use the existing weights that Microsoft provides, but we're trying to build a scoring system in such a way that it incentivizes miners to fine-tune their models and to specialize. So maybe one miner, will specialize in subtropical like temperature prediction, and someone else will specialize in, extratropic winds and stuff like that. So, the validator's role is really picking out and determining which miner is the best. And it is a competition here.
Yeah. Yeah. So does everybody get the same data to crunch, or do you sort of take like, okay, you take the Bahamas, you take Scotland, like how is it sort of chopped up, or is everybody doing the whole world?
It's fully global. It's at a 1/4 degree resolution, which I think is around 20 kilometers like per pixel in size. But yeah, it's fully global. No seams. It's 9 different variables from things like temperatures to winds to pressures, humidity, and then a bunch of different pressure levels, which is like the heights above ground. So every miner gets a standardized input of GFS data. They'll get current data, and then their task is to run the model and produce a full 10-day forecast. And that forecast is produced at 6-hour steps.
Wow. Okay. And then
it's pretty big.
Yeah, no, it's pretty wild. I mean, I'm trying to figure out like how this actually works under the hood, right? Because like LLMs or something, they're just autocompletes, right? Like, and they run on stats. It's almost like a Ouija board that runs on stats, and somehow it produces something which appears to be able to reason and talk to us and pass the Turing test. Right. Like, and nobody really knows why or how, right? Like it's sort of weird. Right. And so, And so I'm trying to figure out, like, how does this apply to weather? Like, how does it predict? Does it just notice connections between things that people can't see because our brains are too little? Like, if a butterfly flaps its wings over here, like a hurricane will happen over there in 3 days. Like, is it like that? Like, do we know anything about how it's produced? How is it figuring out what the weather's going to be? That's
right.
do we know?
Yeah, no, I think you're pretty on point with like that. It's more so recognizing patterns between like a given state and then like what it thinks the future state will be. So, I think existing forecasts start with like fluid dynamic equations and physics equations.
Yeah.
And they'll iterate, which is why they cost so much to run, because you just need so much compute power. But the power of using like a transformer-based model like this is that the model can learn very well. Like if you give it 2 different time steps, it can learn, okay, here's how the atmosphere will change over 6 hours. So that's really all the model's doing. It doesn't have any inherent like baked in understanding of physics. It learns patterns, and from that, it can understand like atmospheric dynamics very well. Like it can track cyclones fairly reliably. If you look at something like, a wind field, if you step it over all the 6-hour steps in the 10-day forecast, it'll look fluid. It'll make sense. Like there's no discrete random jumps. Like it does seem very physically like intuitive.
Yeah. So Noah, you were going to say something?
Oh, I was just going to say, I love that you mentioned the butterfly effect. I think that it's similar to LLMs in that there is somewhat of a black box going on there. The prediction patterns are all learned, and each layer in the model is going to have a different loss function. But at the end of the day, it's essentially just it is recognizing patterns from old data, and that old data is all constructed through years and years of weather research and numerical prediction. So it's not like this would have been possible without all of that. And I think that is an important point to make, is that those numerical traditional weather models are kind of the foundation of what we're able to achieve now.
Okay, so the old way of doing it, or the current way of doing it, maybe, it's sort of like, it's very deliberate. It's like a physics professor, well, I'm going to calculate the eigenvector of the this or the that, and it's very sort of like equations, and he's got a big whiteboard, and it takes like forever to crunch this data in this very deliberate, very planned out, very mathematical way. And then along come you guys and your thing and this Microsoft, LLM-ish model, and it kind of vibes into it. It's like, yeah, I just kind of feels like this is what's going to happen if that happens, right? Almost is what it feels like, right? But it arrives at the same place or a better place, which I'm still just like, I know that it works, but it's still hard to sort of wrap your head around that it actually works, right? So when you guys run your contest, what are you benchmarking against? Do you then score based on what actually happened, or do you score against another, this other traditional model and like what it predicts? What's the judge, if you will?
Right. That's a good question. Yeah, we actually do both. So the caveat here is that actual ground truth data has like on average 5-day delay. So you have to wait 5 days and then hindcast validate the miner's predictions.
Wow.
But,
okay.
We always want to give miners like immediate feedback on how they're doing. So after they run their forecast, they're compared against the National Weather Service's GFS forecast. So we compare how's the miner's forecast compared to this existing fairly state-of-the-art forecast. And then we compare both to like a historical climatology, which is like a weekly or monthly mean of like what's the average temperature, what's the average wind speed, et cetera. So, day one, we can do initial like quality control and give them an initial scoring metric saying, oh, you're maybe, X% better than the existing forecast. But then come 5+ days later, you can actually score on real ground truth, like the gold standard, which is ERA 5, and definitively say, you are X amount more accurate, or, you are X amount less accurate.
Wow. Okay. So that's pretty wild.
So either way, there's incentive throughout the whole scoring process.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. No, I like that you guys are doing both. It's pretty interesting. Okay, so now you guys, you're obviously trying to create a product to sell to the world. Like that's the end goal here, right? It's not just to provide weather for free. It's like we want to provide weather to, the crop people. I'm not sure who buys it, but like I'm just thinking, like all I can think of is in Trading Places where they have the orange forecast, right? Where they know what the orange futures are going to be. I don't know if you guys have seen that movie, but
yes,
but like weather plays a big part. Like knowing what the weather is, you know whether the oranges are going to freeze or not ahead of time, right? If you can see into the future. So who are we? First of all, who are we selling this data to, and how do you compete against the people who's selling the weather data right now, and who will you sell it to in the future, and how big is that market? I guess is what I'm asking.
Sure. So it's kind of hard to quantify the total market size. There, like as you said, there are so many industries that have a use for this data. So in all of our market research, it's been kind of hard to figure out like the total addressable market. Specifically for weather API products. So something like that'll be our first product. It's just like, here's the forecast, here's the raw data, and it'll be API accessible. That's a $4 billion market and growing at a rate of about 7 to 10% over the next 10 years, 7 to 10% annually. So it's a good market to get into because it's like, it's pretty niche, but it's also like still significant. And a lot of those major players in that market are very well established and therefore ripe for disruption. They are legacy companies. So I'm sure you've heard of AccuWeather, but then there are other companies like OpenWeather, Meteomatics. So there aren't a ton of companies in this space, but the ones that do exist are kind of just repackaging products from government like forecasting centers and then putting their own secret sauce on top of it sometimes. So the space itself is very ripe for disruption. I know that a lot of these other companies are already starting to incorporate this machine learning type forecasting into their products. I think that where we have the advantage is one, the competitive element to be fine tuning this model or models into like more accuracy in specific regions or variables. So we kind of have this like, head start because we don't have to necessarily put the resources in as a company to do all of that specialization ourselves. We just kind of get that from the natural incentive structure. And then we can combine all of those products at the end. So say, 10 miners are really good at the tropics and 10 miners are really good at mountainous regions. We can combine all of those forecasts into an ensemble forecast, which is kind of just like an average in a way, but it can get a lot more complicated than that. And that ensemble could be more accurate than any one forecast, especially when we're having so much specialization in different areas.
Yeah, I don't think. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. I was just going to wrap it up and say, though, that so we have a $4 billion market for weather API products. The greater market for like all weather and climate related data services, things like that, is closer to 20. Then weather apps are kind of their own little niche, and that's another $4 billion market. And that's kind of not even scratching the surface of all the other industries that might use weather data, like agriculture and finance, hedge funds, or energy. So it's a pretty big space to get into.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like weather's a big deal. Everybody's got to know what the weather is, right? It's
Exactly.
multiple dimensions, right? So, yeah. So it sounds like add up everything you said. It's it's at least a $30 or $40 billion industry. And I happen to know when Uber started, the worldwide black car market was 42 billion. So you're sort of looking at a market which is roughly equivalent to Uber, which is pretty enormous, right? So Uber became Uber off of a market of that size, right? So if you can undercut, and it sounds like your competition is all dumb and old, right? Kind of like Uber's was. There's a bunch of taxis, right? It sounds like, I mean, I don't know for sure, but it sounds, if I looked under the hood at AccuWeather, I bet I'd find, ganky old Fortran from 1961 or something, or COBOL, or running on TRS-80s, right? Like they've never been changed. Almost like the Swift system is all ganky and old like that, right? So you have your newfangled model. You can charge a lot less for it, and because you have the big world out there of miners, sort of this Linux-like effect of weather forecasting. All these people specializing in little niches so that they can earn the rewards from the TAO emissions, from the nut, when it emits TAO and subnet tokens. It sounds like you're far more maneuverable than the incumbents, and also you can charge less because you yourselves are subsidized by the TAO blockchain. It's doing what it does, right? It's subsidizing what you're doing, so you can charge because of that. You can charge less to whoever these customers are. Did I characterize that correctly? Anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great summary. I just want to add that I think I don't want to say they may be old, but I don't want to call meteorologists dumb.
Okay.
Like they're all very aware of the advancements in these models. I would say these companies are definitely attacking this new paradigm, but they are much slower. They're less limber than we are. And they are plagued by the same thing that any long-standing industry giant is plagued with. I mean, AccuWeather is claiming they're the most accurate hurricane forecaster in the world. And then the study that confirmed that was paid for by them, and it made some claims that were not super supported by science. So the meteorology community was a bit up in arms about that one. But yeah, in general, I think that the market is ripe for disruption, and these models are not quite commercialized yet. So and they're all open source. So there's a big opportunity to commercialize them and drive this whole space forward.
Okay. Well, let me ask you a question now. It's sort of more of a Bittensor TAO wide question and subnet token wide question. A lot of debate about this particular topic as of late. So the way the TAO emissions are they're basically driving a lot of subnet token prices down because there's new subnet tokens being minted every day and sort of flooding into the liquidity pools, and it's not being offset by buy pressure. There's lots of theories on this, from people buying, new subnet tokens that even if they like the subnets are sort of staying out. Only 7% of TAO has entered into the subnet token universe. So that means 93% of TAO is sitting on the sideline, just sort of watching, going, yeah, I don't know, I'm not going to get into subnet tokens yet. And outside money is not yet coming in droves into the TAO ecosystem the way it might flood in if this whole thing were, say, in Solana or Ethereum or some other ecosystem where there's already a ton of liquidity, right? It's kind of hard to get into the TAO universe. And this is then also exacerbated by the fact that you guys are paying yourselves, I'm assuming,
Yes.
by selling your own subnet tokens and TAO, right? So there's sell pressure from you depressing the price of the Gaia subnet token. This allows you to sell your product at a lower price because of the subsidy, which is true for every subnet. It's just not you guys, right? Obviously, Shoots is doing the same thing. How do you feel about that? And what do you think about that dynamic? Do you think that will correct over time? How do you view that? And what are you doing to mitigate against it, if anything?
That's a great question. Sorry. Gabby, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I know. Yeah. So Noah is kind of the expert in DTAO here, but I do want to just say that, the Gaia community, I think it's very understanding, and miners know their role. And they know if we look at this as a company that they own half or 40% of the company. And so we rely on them and they rely on us. So we listen to our community very well. And I think that puts us in a really good position in the DTAO world, because we're super active on Discord and communicating and all of that. And, I think we should be in the top 10. I think that's like we're awesome. We're weather. And I really do think that Gaia has what it takes. But in terms of like the actual politics of DTAO, I think Noah has a more in-depth knowledge of that.
Noah, so I can go over that a little bit. So we, as Nickel 5, we've been in Bittensor since 2013. I mean, 2023, my bad, off by a decade. So anyway, I was hired a little over a year ago, and we started building our first subnets before DTAO. And in that time, I think it was more of sort of like an incubator type environment where it was safer to be a pre-revenue company. And now post DTAO, I would say the best metaphor is that it's like forcing yourself to go public before you even have a product. And so that's super tricky because now you're answering to all sorts of investors that don't have like a longer term vision. You get, spikes in price on pure hype and then huge dumps right after. So it's a really tricky environment to organize a company around in terms of relying on it for your only source of income. Thankfully, because we started before DTAO, we've actually kind of just been coasting on our pre-DTAO earnings, and we haven't sold any of our alpha token yet. So we will have to do that soon, but we're trying to just hold off as long as we can until we have a more sustainable plan for how we'll do that without causing a price death spiral. But it is hard because we have this constant sell pressure from miners, from validators, and then just the inflows are basically just hype at the current moment, or maybe 90% hype and 10% like true believers who are willing to sit through a lot of volatility to see something through. So it is a tricky environment, and that's why we're like really focused on a product that can bring us revenue as soon as possible. Because once we have that revenue flowing, we can use that to cover our business expenses. And we can also bring more buy pressure just through buybacks. So that's really our main priority. But yeah, I'm not going to lie. It's been really hard for us. We have felt like the pressure from the way things are designed is not conducive to startup type company. That's why I think Shoots is doing so well, for instance, because it was very easy for them to just go around and get revenue because they're selling a product that already exists, basically, like pure compute. It's not like it took them months of R&D to pull that together. They have really good infrastructure, but they're just repackaging something that already exists, essentially. And we are too, but it did take us a little more R&D to get there.
Yeah, I'd say TAO Hash is one of those as well. That just repackaging something, or obviously produces Bitcoin, so it produces revenue, right? Like right away. Shoot, same thing, right? Like they're selling compute, and it's subsidized by their emissions, but they're basically reselling something. It's very easy. So whereas you guys, to make a sale, so how do you guys make a sale? Like, do you have to biz dev your way into a sale, or do you just sort of swipe your credit card, get a forecast? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, so we're going to do both, basically. We'll have an API service that, like any sort of online subscription model, there will be a couple different tiers, depending on how much data you want, how quickly you want it, like bandwidth limitations. And then we'll have sort of an enterprise tier, which will be a bit more customizable. It'll be contract based, so we'll require them to sign a year contract. And then with those two avenues, I think most of our sales will go to businesses eventually. So I think the first part is get the product ready and the infrastructure, and that's what we're prioritizing right now. We have the data coming in, so now we just need to package it for sale. And then once we're ready to do that, then we will turn on the sales engine, hire some salespeople, and really try to do some like B2B outreach. and get some contracts signed, or just have people sign up for like a monthly if they don't need the full enterprise plan.
And how far away are you from making sales, do you think?
Well, the infrastructure will be ready in, I would say, on about a month. Then, so once that's up, it could be any day after that. It could be a while after that. Just kind of depends on how well we market it, and how good our sales team is. We have some decent contacts, in terms of like people who are very experienced with B2B tech sales. So we'll definitely be reaching out to them to kind of construct a sales strategy and just revamp our marketing. We kind of have to divide how we market, because right now pretty much we're just marketing to Bittensor and maybe crypto in general. And then once we're ready with the product, then we kind of have to split and say, here's what we have, but don't worry about any of what's going on under the hood, other than like decentralized AI and like, cheaper. And then on the other side, we still have like miners, validators, Bittensor investors, people like that.
Yeah. So, and by the way, I'm just going to say something. I hold your token. It's one of the subnets I hold. I've held it for a while. So I just find, looking through the list of subnets, I was like, this one looks very interesting. I like the fact that it was weather. I think there's too few subnets that have a natural, obvious customer. And yes, it's harder for you to get to your customer, but there is one, and there is an addressable market. And everybody needs to know what the weather report is. It's a need. It's not aspirin, it's oxygen, right? People need this product, right? And so I to me, it was one of the few that was very obvious to buy the subnet token of. And like you, I'm like, come on, do something. It's not going fast enough, right? Like it's always frustrating when like your guy isn't moving as fast as you hoped he would. But I had faith the entire time. I'm like, something's going to happen here. It will. They're gonna achieve fusion at some point. It's just we're not quite there yet. Like the plutonium and the uranium are still in the squeezing together, and it hasn't quite ignited yet, but it's going to, right? So that's how I felt about it.
Well, we really appreciate your support. That's awesome, and we feel like we're making a lot of progress towards that fusion point. Steven did a lot of the research. I would say my end is more just like architecture, overall subnet design. But Steven, I'm going to give him credit for, I would say 90% of all the heavy lifting for the weather research that it took to get this task to come together. And we think we're pretty close to that fusion point of here's our product. It's online. Anybody can get it. And we're going to start to make sales and bring in some real revenue and become not just a Bittensor company, but a real one too, funded by Bittensor. So
yes, incubated by Bittensor.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I'm just general question about the way this process should work. And I think none of us totally know yet. What do you think the recipe is for a successful subnet? There's like some competing theses out there, right? So at one end of the spectrum, there's the theory that this is, Bittensor and TAO is like PBS. We fund these projects and they don't ever have to make revenue. They're just subsidized by the blockchain, right? It's this Bitcoin-like libertarian, universe where it's just subsidized by an ever-growing TAO valuation, and that's okay. And people, basically TAO goes up in value because people like to consume the AI product, and so far that's actually worked, and that's in fact how Bitcoin works, right? So when people are like, some people are like, that's dumb, and other people are like, no, it's not. It already worked amazingly well. You have this $2 trillion asset, one of Earth's greatest products of all time, Bitcoin, and it works exactly like that. And other people are like, well, that's unnatural. This is it's like a Soviet Union, kind of thing where, the government, funds everything. And that's just how it works. There's no real free market. So that's sort of one view, right? That's the way it should be. The other view is that TAO and DTAO tokens should function like a VC. And this is an incubator. And you get you get a grace period. And maybe it's a year, maybe it's 2 years. But at some point, get the fuck out. Earn revenue. Yeah. And you should be buying back. Maybe you should be buying back tokens, or the tokens should be used as utility tokens in your ecosystem. So, for example, in your universe, it would be like, if you want to forecast, great, show back up here with some Gaia subnet tokens to pay for the forecast. That's the only currency that's good here. Like that's one thesis of how to do it. What do you think about the overall, what makes a successful subnet, and how should this work ideally?
Yeah, so I have a few ideas about that. I mean, I'll just go back to my analogy that DTAO kind of forces a company to be public before they're ready to be public. So traditional VC structure is like, they're buying the idea, they're buying the team, and they believe in you, and they give you some time to make it happen. Whereas you launch a subnet and you have immediate sell pressure from the greater market. It's not huge yet, but that is really difficult, especially if you want to tackle something that requires more R&D. So pre-DTAO, we were quite comfortable. We were like, okay, like we're doing research. There's no rush to get revenue. We're just, seeing what is at the forefront of this particular space and trying to advance it. And now it's like, okay, well, now we need to monetize it because the clock is ticking on just like coasting off of hopes and dreams,
Yeah, I was going to say, like, subnets are built off of blood, sweat, and tears. Like successful ones. You got to put in a lot of work.
Yeah. And it's clear the work has increased ever since the launch of DTAO. Because you're right, the Eye of Sauron, meaning me, I'm one of the eyes of Sauron, right? I'll confess. I mean, I was paying attention to subnets before DTAO, but after DTAO, it's like a whole new level of like, scrutinizing all of these things, and a whole new level of information flowing at me from all of these things and from everyone else who's looking at all of these things. So in terms of a forcing function to get greater scrutiny on subnets, absolutely, DTAO has been a massive success, right? So round one goes to the DTAO designers. I don't think they got everything right, but I think they got that right for sure.
Yeah, so I agree. I think that like the free market aspect of it is super powerful. There are still some that slip through the cracks and are able to, boost evaluation on nothing, but for the most part, it seems to work really well. If there's a good product, people buy it. If there's not, they don't. And I think that's great. Going back to your question about how DTAO should function, if it was to function more like an incubator again, I don't think the current mechanics are set up for that to work very well. For that, you would kind of need token lockups, maybe some sort of like grace period to revenue before you start getting like the whole network sell pressure. So right now it's kind of like the best way to success that I see it. Not that I'm speaking from like, hindsight, because we're still battling it out, but it is like launch with a great idea, hype the shit out of it, and then that is going to be what you need to fund your entire project. Or maybe you get outside sources of funding as well, but ultimately you better move pretty quickly, or the funding dries up.
What do you think about OTC deals where venture capitalists come in and buy a bunch of your tokens and lock them up, maybe contractually? Probably, I don't think there's any way to really do it. I mean, on the Bittensor EVM, maybe there's a way to do it down the road, but at the moment, I don't believe that exists. But let's just say there's some way to lock them up. What do you think about that as a mechanism? I noticed in some of your literature, you guys sent me some stuff. There was an idea for token bonds. So, kind of like treasuries, but with subnet tokens. What do you think about those kinds of ideas?
I think it's a great idea. We have had a few offers like that. And I think our main concern in that regard was, one, we don't quite need the money yet. So why would we, introduce a new liability? And if it was contractually obligated, I would say it would feel better. But there's, I guess, crypto in general, there's not a lot of trust in the space that if you go sell someone, half of your subnet alpha tokens and for quick cash in the hope that they won't dump on you when it is the worst
They're probably
time.
going to dump on you. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's definitely risky, but if you had a smart contract to say, well, it has to be locked up this long, that would certainly help. I think the bonds idea could be implemented at a chain level, where and it would introduce it would be the same thing, basically, just a way for investors to get in a longer term way, a way for the subnet to get quicker cash upfront, maybe just in TAO instead of in the alpha token. And I think it could be helpful, but again, it's hard. It's like once you start introducing these larger sums of money, then you have to make a lot more of a compelling story as to why people should lock up $100,000 with you for X amount of time. So I think they're all potentially very good mechanisms that could work well for some subnets, not as well for others. What we're trying to do is just hold on to as much of our own value as we can for now. And then we can really dictate our sell strategy such that we're not killing our price or killing investor sentiment. And it's hard. I mean, most subnets are facing this issue. It's like,
yeah,
how do you take your money out now without scaring everybody? If you sell, more than 5 TAO worth of your token, everyone's like, oh no, they sold.
No, founders
what
are
does this
dumping.
mean? Yeah, exactly.
It's a scam.
Yeah.
I knew it. Yeah, there's a lot of that. I know. And I've been talking to the people directly, and I know they're not a scam, but it's amazing how the conspiracy theories arise in Discord the second, somebody's wallet moves 3 inches, right? So,
yep.
So let me ask another question. So there's another subnet, at least one that I'm aware of, that's also doing weather called Zeus. And yes. I don't understand exactly what they do versus what you do. But what I've heard is that they are actually, you guys have different focuses and you might actually be synergistic. Can you talk a little bit about that? Are you competitors or not?
I think, Steven should take a stab at this.
Yeah, I could take this.
Okay.
So I'll preface this by saying it's probably always good that there's multiple subnets trying to solve the same problem or work within the same field. I think that competition is a net good. I mean, you see this with the compute subnets.
Right.
It might take that a few subnets in trying to solve a certain problem have to show up first for someone to build on their success and failure to arrive at a proper novel solution. I think in the future, there could possibly be a route where we can collaborate with Zeus. I might get some details exactly wrong about what they specifically do. They seem to focus more on regional predictions. I think with only 2 meter temperature right now. So we have 9 variables. They're focusing on a single variable. And I might get this wrong, but they seem to be wanting people to build a model from the ground up, a completely novel architecture, which is, a valid approach, but I think it's a much steeper hill to climb than just starting with an already state-of-the-art model and just fine-tuning.
And you guys are starting with Microsoft Aurora. Right. That's what you're referring to specifically. Mm-hmm. Yes. Okay.
Right. And then I guess our focus then is the infrastructure and the incentive mechanism around that model. Can we get a pipeline that handles, a ton of data? I think the task generates around 2 terabytes of data a day across 200 miners. So it's more, how do you process and move that data around the network? How do you score? How do you incentivize miners to extend and improve the model and keep pushing the boundary of AI models further and further?
Yeah, I would say what you're doing is analogous to what Shoots does. Shoots doesn't say, upload your own AI model. They're like, no. We want basically someone to provide DeepMind, right? We want you to provide Mistral or whatever, Llama or whatever, right? So you're doing the same thing with the weather model, the standard weather model that's out there, correct?
Right. Yeah, that is correct. And I will say in the future, there's a lot of room for us to add new variables, which is honestly one of the big reasons we picked this model over Google's GraphCast, for example. This one's much more modifiable. And, if miners start reaching a limit of accuracy and skill, we can always add new variables, add new tasks, say tracking ocean currents or tracking pollution in the atmosphere, doing, long range, long-term ice, layer predictions, etc. Like there's a lot of flexibility for what we could possibly do.
Yeah. Okay.
I just want to say, there's no ill will. And we if both of our teams were one team, we would be unstoppable, so it's good to have two teams in a space. But yeah.
Yeah. Where there's a Coke, there's a Pepsi. Where there's a DC, there's a Marvel. That's good.
Starry Sprite,
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Right. So it's always good to have competition like that. Totally agree. And frankly, it doesn't really, it both of you being very great benefits TAO. So TAO wins either way, right? So that's fantastic. I'd rather have it all be in the Bittensor ecosystem than even somewhere else, right? So yeah, that's great. So other sort of philosophical question. There's sort of two things afoot right now. One is a number of voices are saying that the root emissions in TAO are the root is too damn high, right? As I keep saying, right? So, and by that I mean that if you stake your TAO in root, at the moment you're making somewhere between 20% and 25% APY. So this disincentivizes you from moving that TAO into subnets, maybe losing it all, maybe making 80% or 300% APY, kind of depending on what you put it in, right? So. But you have to make a choice, and you have to place bets if you move it into DTAO. And as I said earlier, only 7% of TAO has deigned to move itself into subnets. So 93% of it is sitting in root, and of that, roughly 66% is currently staked in root and earning 20 to 25% APY. Pretty cushy life, right? But it's a pretty highly subsidized life. It's like welfare for a bunch of able-bodied TAO. Right, that could be employed and working, right? And it's just sort of sitting on the couch playing video games, eating chips. What do you think about that? Do you think is the root too damn high, and should we fix that or not?
That's a good question. I'm not sure if any of us particularly have like a very strong opinion on that, just because we've been so focused on the actual development of Gaia.
You get like real shit to do. You're not paying attention to the quibbles.
Yeah. Okay. But I know that our founder, Bad English T on Twitter, he's of the mindset that root is fine. It's just like things are kind of correcting. And so we had this initial flood into alpha, like the pioneers of DTAO jumped in. They were really eager. Some of them made a lot of money. Some of them did not. Some of them lost a lot of money. And so I can't quite speak to I know they did a ton of modeling when they were designing DTAO around what the right root weight should be and how fast it should drop compared to alpha weight in the context of a single subnet. One thing we were really frustrated with was the root cell pressure in the beginning. It's not as bad now, but initially it was nobody's even selling and we're still losing 5% a day. But now I think it's kind of evened out a little bit for us because we had this subnet launched with DTAO essentially. So we're down to 45% of root weight. And as far as the APY goes, I'm not sure because I think it is an attractive system for people who are delving into TAO, but maybe not ready to take a full risk yet on a subnet.
Yeah.
And I think that pressure is good for the overall network to say oh, well, I can buy TAO and I can stake it and I can get this return on it. And I don't have to take huge risks yet, but the opportunity is there. Is it too high? Maybe. I think it would be cool if we saw a lot of that TAO come into subnets. It's just, I wonder on longer timescales if that is really like a concern, like we need to adjust the hyperparameter, or we should just kind of like wait it out and eventually will drop by design. And then it will be more attractive to purchase alpha. So yeah, I guess that was kind of a non-answer, but that's where I'm at with
pretty much, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Stephen, you had something?
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, I don't have a strong opinion about this either. I guess my intuition says it's probably slightly too high. And I guess the best that subnets can do right now, and what we're trying to do is, have a compelling enough narrative and product that you can bring people away from this comfortable life staking to root to, put the TAO into subnets and then support and believe projects. That's the best you can do right now. And, I could hear arguments for both sides saying, oh, it's fine, or we just need better projects, better subnets. But I do probably think that it is slightly too high, personally.
Gabriel?
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but when I use, a trading app, their APY is way lower, if I hold within the app. So I don't know. I would say a quarter of 100% is high, statistically speaking in anything. We don't even as subnet owners own 20% of our subnet, so it's like when you put it in that perspective, I don't know. I would say it's a little high.
Okay. So mildly high is sort of what I'm getting here from the group. So
yeah,
I hope this doesn't bite us.
No. It's an opinion. I don't think anybody knows for sure what the right answer is. I got to be honest. I mean, after this past weekend, I my own brain went to it should be around 3 or 4%. I think you should get something. Yeah. I think TAO is an attractive asset, and the fact that it makes some yield, it's better than Bitcoin in that sense, right? I kind of like that, right? So. I kind of feel like you should get some reward, but I also feel like 20 to 25% is like that's blockchain obesity.
Yeah,
right. Like you got to get in the gym, and you got to go inside. Sorry, it's it's time. So yeah, that's sort of where my brain is at. There are other very smart people who disagree with me that I've been having sidebar conversations with. So I'm not positive of that, but that's what I think right now. Go ahead, Noah.
I've certainly not heard of anyone arguing that it should be higher.
More chips. Eat more chips. Yeah. And some ice cream sundaes.
So, I think 3 or 4% that feels reasonable to me as well. And that would certainly make buying into subnets a lot more attractive. And then if we have more liquidity in all the subnets too, then things wouldn't necessarily be so volatile. I think that sounds like a good number, but I guess we'll just see what happens. It doesn't seem like OTF really wants to make a move on that either way. If there are enough voices that say, oh, it has to be lower, maybe that'll happen. But I think for now, we can survive where it is at, since we've gotten past the 50-50 inflection point. The root selling pressure on our subnet is quite a bit lower. It's not nearly as noticeable. So, but for new subnets, it's, starts at 100. So that's tricky for sure. They might be stifling some innovation there.
Yeah. Well, okay. Well, I hope it resolves itself. I'm also looking forward to, the future universe, which hopefully is going to be arriving soon, like hopefully in June even, where liquidity from other chains can start making its way into TAO and into subnet tokens in particular. There is no way for somebody on Solana to just spend some Solana and get some shoots tokens, right? And if there was a way to do that, I think we'd all agree everything would be up like 10x, probably overnight, right? Like if that door opened up. And there's a number of efforts underway to sort of make that happen. And there's some debate over, what the right approach is. Are wrap tokens the right way to go? Is remote control of a TAO native cloud wallet via a Solana wallet the right way to go, because it respects the TAO backing of all the subnet tokens and gets rid of the bridge? Maybe that's a better way to go, right? So I'm not really sure what the right approach is, but I I do agree that somebody should solve this, and soon. And thank God there's several parties, apparently near to doing it. You guys, closing thoughts on that? Do you guys have any opinions on that?
I'm really excited for when it is solved. Imagine like all the people in the Solana trenches that have been playing around with meme coins for 2 years, and there's so much liquidity. I can't wait to see what happens when that liquidity maybe starts to move on to like projects that are trying to build something real.
Yeah, that's the way I feel about it. There's so much liquidity, and it's going into just sadness, right?
Yeah.
Chatbots on Twitter are worth billions of dollars. And along come you guys predicting planet-wide weather. And you're nowhere near the $1 billion valuation, right? Like I think the last time I checked you guys, it's like the single-digit millions, right? Which is absurd.
But we should be.
It's absolutely absurd, right? Chatbots are worth billions, and you guys are single-digit millions. That is like that can flip. The only problem is that the Solana people can't get to you, and they don't know about you. That's it. It's the only reason why. Anyway,
we're definitely rooting for all of those projects. I know Subnet 10. I forget the other ones, but. Whoever does it first, we are going to be very happy with them. And maybe we should tell Ian Bad English T to go support those subnets a little bit while they work on them.
Yeah. Okay.
He's the money guy.
Any closing thoughts, guys? We're coming up on the hour here, and now's the time to plug anything you got, your Twitter handle, whatever. So starting with you, Noah, what do you got?
Well, first of all, thanks for having us on. That was a lot of fun. And we have a lot of exciting things in the pipeline. You can check out our website. It's gaiaresearch.ai. You can check us out at Subnet 57 in the Bittensor Discord. We also have a Twitter. You can find us all over the place. But essentially what we just want to say is that what's coming up now that we have the task launched is that we are going to be monetizing the task. And we're hoping to be one of the first Bittensor subnets to actually generate real revenue. I know there's a few, but we want to be one of the first. It's not a lot of them that have hit that milestone yet. And we think we're pretty close. We're knocking on that door. So
awesome.
That's what I want to say. Yeah.
Steven, what do you got? Anything?
Yeah, thank you for having us. Noah plugged the website. On there, you'll also find links to our Substack, I think on Twitter as well. This reads our Substack posts. You can also find our abstracts. We went to the European Geoscience Union convention in Vienna, present to real scientists for soil moisture, and then just like general subnet architecture. So you can check out those abstracts online as well. Our website has a lot of cool new visuals now for the weather task. There's a globe. Soon you'll be able to pay and get data access as well. And if you're a miner, if you're interested, if you have domain knowledge, come hop on Gaia, find who to model, compete against other miners. We're always looking for smart people, PhDs, everything.
Look at you guys with PhDs and going to conferences in Vienna to predict the weather planet wide, and fucking meme coins on Solana are worth $1 billion. Like it makes me want to just kill myself, but I won't do that because I've got more shows to do.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Don't do that.
Gabriel, what do you got?
Thanks for having us. I just want to let you know, stay tuned. We have also some like widget tools coming out once weather data comes in, so that will be more like user friendly. You can just add it to your phone and see the weather 10-day forecast. We're in talks with, I don't know if you've heard of BAE Systems.
Yes.
And also we have contacts with a bunch of actual scientists from NOAA and LASP and SWIRI who are going to be coming on and helping us mine. So,
wow,
a lot of good stuff coming.
That's super cool. That's kind of like the people who work at Google and Microsoft, also running subnets. Like that's actually another trend that I've seen, right? It's pretty wild, right? Or even just mining in chutes or something like that, right? So yeah. All right, guys, this has been awesome. I'm really happy that we did this, and I'm a fan and a token holder, and I wish you all great and giant success. My name is Mark Jeffrey. This has been Hash Rate. We'll see you all next time.